Hi everyone, welcome to the video on supply and the law of supply. So before we had the video on demand and I asked you guys to, just behave as if, see what makes sense because you guys are consumers every day. With supply, it's a little bit harder. You've got to kind of put a different hat on. And so you'll hear me over the next little while refer to as two different hats. You've got your demand hat or your supply hat. And just like when you wear a hat, you're only going to wear one at a time. If you're tackling problems about supply, put your supplier hat on and pretend you are a supplier. Okay. And the key part about that is what we learned earlier in the year, which is the main motivation for businesses, which is to maximize profit. Okay, so you by having your supplier hat on, you've got to remember that you're going to like things that maximize your profit, and usually that will be higher prices. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, okay, because you've got to, as a supplier, allocate your resources towards things that have a higher price. You've got to try and retrain your brain when you're doing supplier problems that high prices are good. Yeah, because when we have a higher price, it enables us to make more profit. So just like we did with demand, we're going to do a little bit of a little example with my trusty whiteboard here. And again, with your supplier hat firmly on, we're going to be selling something today. So we're going to be selling, I don't know, laptops. All right, I'm looking at a laptop now, so we're going to be selling laptops. All right, so if we're going to do the same kind of schedule, so before we did a demand schedule, so this time it's going to be a supply schedule, which is what it's called, where you have the table of price and quantity. And there's, let's say, 11 of us here. I'm going to assume if of a HP laptop, if the price was $50, I'm going to assume that none of you are willing or able to supply a laptop for $50. Okay, remember your suppliers. As consumers, this sounds like a great deal, and you would all get on board. But as suppliers, you're not going to make any money. Okay, if you're going to sell your laptop for $50, so that's going to be a zero. At $150, there might be some of you who might have a really cheap manufacturing technique that you might be able to sell your laptop for 150, but there's not going to be many of you. Then maybe at 250, there's a few more of you who are like, okay, I can actually make a profit at that point. Then at $500, now we start getting into the serious business. Okay, so at this stage, 8 of you are willing and able to supply a laptop, to sell a laptop for $500 and make a profit. And then if we go $700, we're up to, let's say, 10. And then at, I don't know, I'm just making this up, at $900, all of you are willing and able to supply a laptop. All right, so when we separate that now and we do our, again, it's the same axis. So up here we've got price, and on this axis we've got quantity. We're going to now transfer this data across to the chart. Okay, so at 50, so this, remember how we do our axis? We take our largest point and our smallest point. So, okay, my largest point for dollars here is 900. So that's going to be here. And I can easily divide 900 by 3. Yeah, so that's about a third and that's about a third. So that becomes 300 and that becomes 600. Let's do the same for quantity. Okay, so we've got 11 and it's always down 0 at the end here. So half of 11 is 5.5. That's really messy. So we'll go up a little bit to 6. Half of 6 is 3. And then 7 is going to be somewhere in here. Okay. No, is that right? Yeah, that's about right. Okay. So at $50, so we go 0 up to 50, which is about here. There's 0. So I'm going to do an X. Yeah, I'm moving 0 people along quantity, 0 suppliers. Then I'm going to 151. So 150 is half of 300. 150 across to 1, another X. 250 to 3. So 250 just below 300 all the way across to 3, another X. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I want you guys to replicate this process in your exercise books and finish the supply line. So pause the video and finish this while I'm showing it. All right, so let's keep continuing here. make sure you pause the video and don't just continue to let me do all the hard work. Yeah, you've got to learn how to do this too. All right, so then we've got 508. So we go up to 500 and then across to 8. Then we go up to 700 and across to 10. And we go up to 900 and across to 11. So this is our supply line. And we're going to mark that with an S1 because it's the first supply line. Okay, now normally we will have a supply line. By the way, check yours against mine. See if it looks fairly similar. It should kind of dip up at the edge there. All right, so now I'm going to rub out the actual data. So if that didn't make sense, then please go back over that part of the video. How we normally draw a supply line, again, we've got quantity on this axis and we've got price on this axis. We normally just draw a straight line like that, okay, just so it's nice and simple. But when you need to plot the data, make sure you actually plot the data in as it's presented in the table, okay? Now, why is the supply line slanted like this? I've got a little hint. Yeah, if you've got an up and down line, supply leans right. It kind of rhymes. Okay, so that's an easy way to remember which way the supply line goes, because the demand line, yeah, is shaped like that, and the supply line is shaped like that. Supply leans right. And generally speaking, for most markets, it's always going to lean over to the right. Why? Well, now we're going to get to the concept of the law of supply. So the law of supply is, as the price rises, quantity supplied rises. And let's see if this makes sense. So let's say we've got 1 point here, P1, and the respective quantity supplied, Q1 at that price. Okay. At this point, there's not many suppliers who are willing and able to supply that particular product or service. But if the price were to go up to here, and then we look at the corresponding amount of quantity supplied, there are many more suppliers who are willing and able to supply at that price point. Why? Because there's more profit to be made. It's the same good or service, just at different prices. So if the price is up here, well, then then all the suppliers in this particular market are highly willing and able to supply at that particular price. And they're going to be allocating as many resources as they can to supply that particular good or service because there's lots of profit to be made. Whereas if it were to go the other way, down from P2 to P1, well, you're going to have, from this price to this price, well, you're going to have some suppliers here who now don't make any money. And so, you know what? They're not going to sell their product. They're not going to put their products out to market because they're not making any profit at these lower prices. So at higher prices, there is a higher quantity supplied, and at lower prices, there is a lower. I hope this makes sense for everybody. There'll be further videos on shifts to supply, but this is just the basic one on what supply is, why the line is shaped to the right, and a recap on the law of supply. Thanks, guys.